Next up on Northwestern Outdoors Radio, it is early spring. As a matter of fact, in a lot of places in the Northwest, it still feels like winter. But a lot of folks are thinking about heading out and looking for shed antlers. With that in mind, we thought we would get the founders of Oregon Shed Hunters, based in Redmond, on the line. They are Rob Tanner and Troy Capps. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning.
Rob, we're going to start with you. I know that Troy is waiting in the wings, so to speak. Yep. I'm going to be really honest. I am like the worst shed hunter in the world. I go out every winter as the snow melts. I look for deer trails where I find lots of tracks, lots of scat, but I never, walking along those areas, seem to find any shed antlers. What am I doing wrong?
Well, we get that a lot. You know, in all reality, it takes a lot of time to be a successful shed hunter. And I think the number one thing to try to focus on is locating the critters. So locating the deer and elk. And, you know, that takes time. And so in years where you don't have heavy snowpack to drive deer and elk into their traditional winter ranges, you need to basically keep track of the deer and elk. And so if guys are retired or, you know, don't have jobs, that's great because you can do that on a daily or weekly basis, basically driving around or hiking and locating animals. And that's going to be your best tip. You know, where the animals are this time of year is where you're going to find the sheds.
Well, unfortunately, Rob, the economy's good, and there's way too many of us working right now, so we might not have time to drive around all day to find the deer. So what would you recommend for the rest of us that we do that are just doing it for a day during the weekend or on a day off work? Right.
So best bet there is to focus on those traditional winter range areas. Now, that's going to take some time on your end. So talking to Fish and Wildlife and talking to some of the local folks on where those traditional winter ranges are. However, one of the big things for Oregon shed hunters is we want to make sure that we're doing that ethically and that we're not, bumping deer and elk when deer and elk are, basically living off of their fat reserves.
So, Rob, before we continue, let's get Troy on the line. And Troy, when it comes to harassing wildlife, especially after a winter like we've seen this year where there's still a ton of snow out there, those deer, they're not in great shape. I mean, I've heard horror stories of people actually chasing after deer with antlers, hoping those antlers are going to fall off. What does this do to the deer when folks do this?
Yeah, that's a terrible thing to do. Obviously, when the deer, needing their feed. That's one of the reasons why Rob and I, created Oregon Shed Hunters is to get that word out there to people that, we got to leave the animals alone after the wintertime, where it's really heavy like this year, and do things ethically. We're not crossing private ground. We're not chasing things when, we're sneaking in out there. And so just try to get the word out to everybody that, hey, leave these animals alone. There's a good time when the snow's gone. They've had some feed. They can get out there and get themselves, ready for summer and the next winter.
So that actually brings up a good point. When should we be out there shed hunting? Because like I said, if you're east of the Cascades, it's still snow-covered on a good portion of the landscape right now. Do we wait till the snow's gone? Do we wait until you start seeing some green in the hills? Is that when you should go up there?
One of our rules is we're always, let the snow get off the ground. And even over here in Central Oregon, in this part of the state, even when the snow is gone, that ground gets really soppy. And so if you're out there, with a four-wheeler or whatever, you're tearing up the ground. So our rule is always, let the snow get off the ground, let it kind of harden up a little bit, and that's going to be, we're looking at the first part of April is always a good mark for us because, the sun's been out and the ground's getting hard and snow's gone and deer have had their chance to get some food in them. And so, yeah, it's really important to let them, do their thing when they need to do their thing. But unfortunately, we do have those people that, they try to push that limit and they're trying to get the early jump on everybody on the shed hunting. And, those are the people that ruin it for, the people that want to do things ethically.
I'm really glad you brought up the off-road travel issue, or in some cases, even the road travel issue, because you're absolutely right. A lot of our public lands will get damaged by some of these over-eager shed hunters who are out there in four-wheelers, and they just tear up the land, they tear up the roads, and as we all know, it's not like our government agencies like the BLM or Forest Service have a whole lot of money to repair these roads right now.
No, exactly. There's been times where Rob and I have been out hiking, and we'll be out in an area where we're on foot, and you'll see four-wheeler tracks that have just crisscrossed through the sagebrush back and forth, and it's just a terrible thing for them to do, and we're out there trying to hike out there by foot. And we know they're getting out there and tearing things up, and the best thing for our organization and people that are doing it the right way is, we've actually been out before and caught somebody out illegally out there, and we stopped them, and we got their permit number and on their four-wheeler, and we turned them in. We try to make sure that people aren't doing the wrong things out there. Not only does it harass the deer and elk, it's just tearing up the ground out there, and that's why we have designated roads for that purpose.
I'm glad you brought that up, Troy. I got a couple questions for Rob before we go. Rob, when it comes to permits, when it comes to licenses, when it comes to regulations, are there any in the state of Oregon when it comes to shed hunting?
Yeah, so in Oregon, there's a couple designated areas that do have seasons, but the majority of Oregon, there is no designated shed hunting season. There is no special license or permit that you need to buy unless you are an antler buyer. So in that case, you do need a special license through ODF&W. But, that's one of the things that why Troy and I got Oregon Shed Hunters put together was essentially a lot of the western states were starting to regulate shed hunting for good reasons. And we were hoping to get the word out here in Oregon that, hey, there's western states that are starting to do that. So let's get ahead of the curve and promote ethical shed hunting, do the right thing. And hopefully in Oregon, we don't need to go there.
So a question for you, is it shed buyers or shed antler sellers that have to buy these permits?
It's an antler dealer is what it is.
So it's somebody who buys and sells antlers.
Yes.
Gotcha. Now, you did mention there are some states that do have regulations, and I'm not going to ask you because you're not an authority of all 5 states in our listening area, but I did notice on your Facebook page that in Wyoming, west of the Continental Divide, you can't pick shed antlers off the ground until May 1st, and Wyoming Game and Fish has actually started putting some GPS markers and some trail cameras out there to catch folks who are trying to do this.
You are exactly right. Like you say, we pretty much focus in Oregon, but yeah, Wyoming, there's parts of Colorado, there's some western states that are enforcing this shed season, and the GPS tracking, the chips that they're putting in antlers, I mean, they're getting serious about it, and it's a good deal because it's making those people that maybe want to illegally shed hunt, it's making them double think about, hey, there might be a chip in that shed that I pick up, and they're going to be able to track me right to my house. So it's a good thing.
And the bottom line is this, folks. Check with your state Fish and Game or Fish and Wildlife Agency. See if there's any regs regarding shed hunting and just follow them. And like Troy was talking about, follow the ethical shed hunting techniques when it comes to when you should do it so you're not disturbing the wildlife when they are at the lowest point of their reserves and trying to survive. Don't be traveling off-road when the roads are still muddy. In fact, don't even travel on some of those roads when they're still muddy because you're just going to muck everything up. Just do it ethically, do it the right way. Before we go, Rob, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about Oregon Shed Hunters, what you do, and how folks can find you on the web?
Oregon Shed Hunters, we got it going, one, because we love shed hunting, but two, because we wanted to try to promote ethical shed hunting. And that's a big message of what we're trying to get out there and have been for the last 14 years that we've been going. We've got our Facebook page, Oregon Shed Hunters, and then, we do have a website, and we host an annual event, group shed hunt, usually in the Central Oregon area, where we have, anywhere between 75 and 125 people show up, and that's always a fun event that we love doing. We've got some great sponsors in Danner, Loophole, Nosler, Worksharp, and others that really help us put on these events. We're also currently dealing with some youth hunts that we're putting together on the Nature Conservancy ground here in Central Oregon.
Okay.
So that's something that we're really excited about.
Question for you, because we're running out of time. When is your annual shed hunt, and can some of our listeners participate?
Yeah. It's open to anybody, and that annual event this year is the weekend of April 7th. If you're interested, check us out on Facebook. That's our primary source of information, and so we'll be updating that in the next few weeks.
Well, there you go, folks. An opportunity to go shed hunting with people unlike me who know what they're doing, so you'll probably have some success. You're going to have a lot of fun taking place the weekend of April 7th. Just look for Oregon Shed Hunters on Facebook, or if you don't do Facebook, go to OregonShedHunters.com. Rob, Troy, thanks so much for sharing this with us today on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
Thank you, guys.